Okay, Wham.
Mumbai,
Uh, yeah, I think everything recording good. Guest today is Dr. John T.
John Sterling sign by.
John John Poundsign.
Sterling sign
And
by.
yeah,
Sterling sign.
Pound Sterling,
No, Sterling by.
as we call it. Okay, yeah. So anyway, that connect John T to being formerly from Trinidad, as we both were, and now in the UK, Wales, right?
Yeah, Wales.
Okay. And a small background, maybe a big background, John T is a medical doctor practicing in Wales. Yeah. ENT still?
Yeah, air, nose, and throat. Still doing air, nose, and throat. For now. For now. Yeah.
Okay. And you plan to change that? You see that as a career move from ENT?
Plan is a potential career move out of hospital medicine into big
Oh
pharma.
yes. Okay. But I thought the reason you do at ENT is because that is a Trini thing to do. Just because the
And
Trini phrase. Yeah, and it's a phrase I didn't hear in a while, but I think it's still a recognized normal thing, right? So you carry the Trini roots into Wales with you.
yeah. And
So the team that we have for this month is October published in October, right? Um is Matt was the first guest and he shared Mamoral story from Mamoral, right? So my question is if you have any um ghost stories being in a hospital and then we'll connect
ghost
it to something else.
ghost
If you have,
stories. Ghost
yeah.
stories being let me think. I
But in multiple hospitals, right?
Yeah, I work in multiple hospitals and I mean plenty dead bodies around, but I never actually see anything supernatural or anything out of the
Okay.
ordinary happening. Actually, well, during the pandemic when we had to actually stay in the hospital overnight, which I don't usually have to do, and
Mhm.
we had to sleep in this room and I mean, I sure is nothing supernatural, but obviously when you're sleeping in your room, you hear a lot of knocking and groaning and moaning, but
Mhm.
it's probably just the patients. It's probably
Mhm.
nothing. It's probably nothing, and probably the building old. But that's the most supernatural thing that ever happened to me working in a hospital, and nothing ever out of the ordinary ever happened that I had to double check and question myself, or that sound
Mhm.
like something funny or.
Well, yeah, similar to me because I generally didn't have any experiences like that. Matt was able to share recent things that happened, and I'm sure he has a lot more stories like that. But for me, it doesn't really happen, and that's why I'm more interested in hearing people say that. And as you're a doctor, people will be like, okay, well, a doctor will be in a hospital and they'll see things and hear things and
I
experience
never,
things. Um,
I never see or hear nothing, no? And I guess the secondary cause of actually is probably environmental as well. If you grow up in an environment around people who believe in supernatural and superstitious stuff, you more likely to see and believe in that kind of thing as well.
yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that, but like I kind of grew up around people who might have believed in things like that, like maybe my parents. But maybe when I was younger, probably because those things were still scary, right? And I still like to watch scary movies, but not so much a thing now. Like I don't experience things like that. Um, but yeah, anyways, just to hear from you, and I wanted to connect it with your you don't have any practice in religion, right?
Nah, I don't practice any religion. No, not me.
So
Not now.
to see if there's a link with people who have more religious beliefs and um supposedly experiencing uh, these kind of supernatural encounters? Do you think
Well,
there's a link?
I mean, there might be a link, but I mean, because I mean, if religious people more likely to believe in an afterlife and the presence of a soul or a spirit, and if you think those things exist and they could linger around after death, you're more likely to believe, or I'm more likely to see one of these things. But if you don't believe in a soul or a spirit, that less likely. But you'd be surprised how quickly uh a non-believing person could become believing because recently when I went to Switzerland and we went on these cable cars. So if you don't know these cable cars, they take you from the bottom of a mountain, thousands of feet up to the top of a mountain. And they're all fine because it's Swiss engineering. So obviously if something like that was in, say, Trinidad, you wouldn't really trust the engineering to do it safely. But this is Swiss engineering, so you think it fairly safe. But then we were halfway up, going up to the top of the mountain, thousands of feet in the air, and the cable car just shut down. And then
Mhm.
obviously I had a little bit of a religious connect at that point in time.
Yeah, I heard that in the end, if somebody's faced with death, tend to become religious, right? Suppose
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
fear or like a instinctual response.
yeah,
Uh,
probably.
and it kind of comforting too, right?
Yeah, I
Uh,
guess so.
yeah, so that's an interesting experience. But as you mentioned, Switzerland and Trinidad, I want to make a comparison between your working experience, and you have to go into small details, but working as a doctor in Wales or okay, working multiple places in UK, right?
Right.
So working in the UK versus working in Trinidad, like what do you think are the maybe pros and cons of both locations and differences?
Well, the healthcare model in the healthcare models in both countries are socialized healthcare, just as it is in Canada. It's all completely
Mhm.
socialized healthcare, all paid for by the government. There is obviously small private sectors in countries with socialized healthcare for people that don't want to go through the waiting times that come along with socialized healthcare. So I would say prior to the pandemic,
So wait,
the
you have private care in the UK? Like you
yes,
could
but
pay?
it's a very small system, not very massive at the moment, as yet at
Yeah,
least.
I think
But I
I
would
think
say
Canada doesn't have
because the Trinidad healthcare model was based off of the
it.
UK NHS model, which is socialized free healthcare for all. It was very similar, and it was an easy transition because they use all the same drugs, they use the same, they treat patients the same way, same
Mhm.
algorithms they use to treat patients. So
Okay.
it was the same except the fact that um the Trinidad obviously had not as good management of the system. We had enough money. We had more than enough money in Trinidad to have a good healthcare
Mhm.
system running, but the management was poor. So, um,
Okay.
and I think it's starting to become that way here because during the pandemic, obviously, and with, I don't want to say the B word, Brexit, um, the
Okay.
UK has dropped significantly in their rankings in terms of the power of their economy and how much money we actually
Mhm.
have. So our healthcare system here is actually on tandem now. Not as bad as Trinidad, but getting there because you have very long wait times. The healthcare is free. People who have cancer more likely to survive here than Trinidad because cancer people get priority. Those are the only people that get priority, people who have cancer.
Mhm.
Everybody else have to wait years for treatment. And I think it's starting to get similar in Canada as well since the
Yes.
pandemic.
We have long wait times. As far as I know, people would say that waiting room times are long.
Yeah. So
So
and
I've heard complaints.
that's only since the pandemic is deteriorated so terribly. But I think before the pandemic, the healthcare system worked pretty well here. So who knows if it will recover in the next couple of years. But is a pretty working here though is a much better work-life balance because
Hmm.
they managed to stick. with the European Working Time Directive hours, which means that you're capped at an average of 48 hours a week. You
Hmm.
can't work more than an average of 48 hours a week, which is good. It protects you, protect your level of mental health and mental fatigue. And that we didn't have those protections in place in Trinidad, of course, because in Trinidad we would normally work 80 plus hours a week, without
Okay.
question. And they're still doing it as far as I'm aware, working 80 plus hours a week. But I like that we have those protections here in terms of capping how many hours we work. It means you get more time to enjoy the money you earn. And
Mm.
yeah, so it's a very similar working environment, I would say, but with better protections. You get a lot more free time as well because I don't know, as you know, in Trinidad, holiday time and vacation time very limited. Most people get like 20 days, if so
Hmm.
much. And
Okay.
I get
Yeah, I
33
get that.
days a year, which is a lot.
That's a lot because I get 15 days,
Yeah.
um, and that's working for the Canadian government,
Yeah.
um, which usually has like a good, um, I guess that's considered good as a good amount of vacation time in Canada. If you work, you said you work 48, a max of 48 hours, right? Is that
Is that is it?
including overtime? Like you could work overtime up to that point?
Well, it's an well, for the same employer, yeah. So if you do overtime for the same employer, it still can't cross that 48
Hmm.
hours per week on average. It doesn't have to, I mean, on an average week, you could end up working 70 hours, but then you have to make up for it in other weeks and do less hours. But for the same
Right.
employer, for your permanent employer, yes, you can't do more than that 48 hours. But I could do outside extra work for other employers, so other hospitals and so on, and cross that 48 hours now is probably not I don't do it, but it's probably not recommended and probably not allowed, but a lot of people do it because the overtime pay is so drastically good compared to normal working time pay in the sector, which and that's another comparison that's much better because the overtime pay in Trinidad was pretty terrible.
Hmm.
Um, because minimum wage in Trinidad is what now, like $8, 8 TT an hour, something like that,
I
or
don't know
less.
for Trinidad. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I don't know what Trinidad's minimum wage is right now.
the minimum wage is terrible. This, but for overtime rates in Trinidad, you'd probably get an average of about 80 to 100 TT an hour, which is about £12 still in an hour. And here, I would probably get 60 to £80 still in an hour for overtime work. So that is a
Okay. Yeah,
drastic
much more.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I compare things, it's really about not just the numbers, but the cost of living. Because in Canada, we make more, but things are just generally more expensive. Well, most things are more expensive, like rent and um, I guess transportation, um, food. Some food items, supermarket items are more expensive.
Well, what I found is cost of living is highly correlated with where you choose to live in a developed country. Obviously, if you live in the
Hmm.
biggest, most populated, most expensive city, which in your
Hmm.
case would be Toronto or Vancouver, um,
Hmm.
your cost of living is going to be ridiculous. So similarly here,
Yeah,
the only ridiculously expensive city to live in is London.
London.
If you live
Hmm.
anywhere in the UK, in any other city outside of London, your cost of living pre-pandemic was extremely affordable in comparison to Trinidad. It was extremely affordable. Now it's starting to get a bit ridiculous. Not for myself, but for all the working class people that would have had a really good quality of life prior to the pandemic no longer have such a good quality of life because of the
Hmm.
inflationary rates and the cost of living. So I would
Hmm.
say where I live, which is the capital of Wales, Cardiff, it is probably still twice or three times as populated as Port of Spain, is
Okay.
is a much higher cost of living now than before. But in return for your cost of living, you get lower crime rates. You get running utilities that work 24/7. I mean, I never had a single day here where we never had running water, for example.
Yeah, I find that
Um,
as um one of these things that easy to not notice, but when you think about it, it's one of the best benefits that your utilities are reliable.
yeah, yeah. Because I could count on one hand the number of hours my electricity or internet might have gone in the
Hmm.
5 years I'm here. Um,
Yeah,
so,
same,
but,
same.
yeah.
Um, and so as we cross from from work, general, what I want to know is general um life experiences in the UK versus Trinidad and why you might prefer one over the other, or what do you think are the benefits of the both locations?
I mean, yeah, so in the UK, I've worked in both England and Wales, and well, live in both England and Wales. I've found, um, in both cities I've lived in, which is Nottingham and Cardiff, both pe people in UK, just, they're very, very friendly and they're very
Hmm.
chatty and they always like to chat and talk about things. And I mean, I haven't personally experienced racism or anything like that
Hmm.
so far in the UK. I mean, there might have been, and I just missed it. But
Hmm.
but I personally find they're very accepting and I don't know. I
Hmm.
I think it's been a decent place to live in, and it's fairly easy to make friends here as well in the UK, I would say. Um,
Really?
maybe I think that's probably maybe to do with people from Trinidad or the Caribbean in general having a lot of traits left over from the UK because when you come here and you see people eating baked beans every day and you're like, oh, we used to eat baked beans in Trinidad, and you would think that was a Trinidadian thing. No, that came from
Yeah,
the UK. And then you see
yeah,
people eating chocolate digestives every day, and like, oh, that's not a Trinidadian thing, that's a UK thing. Oh, so
yeah,
because
yeah,
we
yeah, yeah,
get
yeah.
all those things from our colonial heritage, it was probably
Mhm.
easier to integrate into the society than, say, a lot of people who are like refugees and stuff from the Middle East might struggle because they don't have that
Yeah,
heritage.
it's different,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's similar in Canada too, because Canada still has the head of state being the King of England,
yes, yeah,
and we have a lot of similarities. So, well, small similarities, but things that made it easier to transition, and that's like we use kilometers per hour and degrees Celsius for temperatures, and uh, and we also flip to the imperial system. So we have if we have weights like in gym or body weight, we use pounds.
yeah, okay.
So that was just a normal shift into life here. And a lot of Trinidadian people are here, and Canadian people tend to, if you mention you're from Trinidad, they know somebody from Trinidad already. So it's not like you don't have to explain where Trinidad is.
No, yeah, similar
So
here. So everyone, so I mean, but the thing is, every time I tell somebody here from Trinidad, they would say, "Oh, Trinidad and Tobago," because that's how they know it, Trinidad and
yeah,
Tobago.
yeah, yeah,
Because we would say
yeah.
Trinidad because I don't know, most people who from the islands would either identify as being Trinidadian or being Tobagonian. They wouldn't identify as both. Is very similar here actually because you have England and Wales which share a big border and they share legislation for everything as for most things as well. But people from Wales would never identify as British. They would identify as Welsh, which is similar to what Tobagonians would.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
similar in that sense.
Yeah. Well, Wales is like the United Kingdom is like separate countries, but together as one, right?
The main island has three countries, England, Wales, and Scotland.
Right.
And then uh, the island Ireland is then split into two countries, Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. And Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, and Republic
Mhm.
of Ireland is their own country.
Independent.
Yeah, so that is how the islands are split, and it have obviously you might know it had a lot of trouble, what they call the troubles with Ireland, and over the
Yeah.
Protestants and the Catholics, and there was fighting,
I
and they had a lot of bombings in London where the Irish terrorist group was trying to fight. Anyway, that's still ongoing subtly, but not as badly as it was
okay.
2, 3 decades ago.
Oh, so that was relatively recent. I've heard of it, but I thought it was like more historical and not as
No, that
serious.
that was very recent, where they had a lot of bombings and people dying in London from the Irish terrorists. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, so in comparison to Trinidad and Tobago would be it's still one nation. So it's just two islands, but one nation. And in Canada, we have provinces and territories. So each province and territory is technically like its own country, but just combined. So all of us,
right.
it functions as one country. Um,
Okay.
and the place is so big that you can drive for hours and hours and hours and still be within the same province, which is something we've done before. So it's strange.
Right.
You could drive around Trinidad in a few hours, but here it's much bigger. Um,
Yeah, no, yeah, similarly here, you could drive from end to end. So you could technically drive from the top of Scotland to the bottom of England in probably 18 hours or so. I don't think you could drive Canada end to end in 18 hours.
not 18.
Yeah.
No, it'll take
This is
days.
a, s-
It'll take
it's
few
just
days.
it is, yeah, because it's a small island, and then once you get into the wilderness in Scotland, you don't have the big highways where you can go fast and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but,
Um,
yeah,
okay. So I've heard that, so you went to Switzerland, you said, right?
yeah.
That the EU, or like European countries, let's just say Europe, um, doesn't feel that big. So like you can drive across to, you want to drive, maybe cross borders, but it doesn't feel like a very long trip. Is it really
Um,
like, does it feel like a big place
well,
compared to like US or Canada?
no, I mean technically, so yeah, that's the thing. So people who live, so Switzerland itself is bordered by a number of countries, France, Germany, Italy, and so on.
Hmm.
And you could basically drive through all those countries within one day. You could drive through all those countries in a day. So, and even me who
Hmm.
off separated by the English Channel, I could have driven from home in Wales to where we stayed in Switzerland in about 13 or 14 hours.
So you have a tunnel or something? How do you
So
drive?
so yeah, so you go to the port, and you take a ferry, and the ferry drops you in
Ferry.
France, and then you drive from there. So that's our connection, a ferry from here to France, and then you can drive wherever you
Okay.
want from France throughout Europe. But yeah, it would have just taken me 14 hours. And so what was fascinating, while we were in Switzerland, we saw a Chinese couple who were living. They were driving. They were parked up somewhere in a motorhome, right? Like one of those motorhomes. And on the panel of their motorhome, they had a map of Asia and Europe. And they basically had their starting point somewhere in China, I'm not sure exactly where,
Hmm.
and showing with like arrows where they drove from China to like dozens of countries and cities throughout Asia and Europe. And they did that with just a motorhome. So that is how accessible so many places are just with, I mean, it is big and it's a long drive, and you could probably
Hmm.
drive the entirety of Europe in a couple days. Um,
Yeah.
but it's very accessible
That's
with cars, and you don't even have to do it with cars because their train network is so good and
y-
reliable in Europe. You could do everything on trains, better for better for the environment as well if you do it on a train. And the trains in Europe are actually very affordable and cheap.
mhm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think we might be close to time, but I just wanted to end the conversation on something that um we don't want to get too controversial with it, but it could be some advice as well. So like we both um left Trinidad and we live in different places now.
Yeah.
What was your transition into the UK like? Like how did you jump from, or why did you decide, how did you jump from working in Trinidad to decide to go to the UK
Well,
as
the
your immigration
decision
process?
was fairly easy in the sense that we had to decide to go transition from the medical field in an English speaking country to another English speaking country because obviously none of us
Hmm.
bilingual or multilingual. So, and of the developed English speaking nations, which would be UK, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore,
Hmm.
you had to also look for one that's still fairly within close distance to Trinidad. So Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, all those countries, they're a
Right.
day or two
Too
flying
far.
away to
Too
get
far.
to do the medical board licensure show exams for the US and Canada extremely difficult. So the UK is the easiest place for a doctor in Trinidad to transition into, and you be basically and they love West Indian doctors because we have a high our degrees with a lot. They know we dependable, they know we safe doctors.
Hmm.
So any of us who just apply for a job if you're competing with, I'm not going to name countries, but if you're competing with people from the other
Hmm.
countries, you will most likely get that on straight after the interview because I've interviewed for multiple positions and like straight after the interview, 5 minutes later, like, okay, yeah, you
Yeah.
have the position. And there are dozens of people interviewing for these jobs. So they really value
Hmm.
West Indian doctors in the UK and it's not hard to do their board exams. Well, their equivalent to
So,
board exams.
right, so the transition is that you have to do some exams. You have to do studies as well, or do they just recognize
Just
your
exams,
qualification?
just exams. So you don't have no real prerequisites to sign up for the exams. You sign up for the exams, you pass these exams, and you get registered with the medical board in the UK, which is called the GMC, General Medical Council, and then you apply for jobs, and that's it. It's really a straightforward transition
Okay.
versus the US and Canada, where you have to do their exams, which are extremely difficult, and then go
Yes,
through a
I heard.
matching system, which is again very confusing and difficult. So is not straightforward or easy to get to the US or Canada from Trinidad.
Yeah, I know that. I've heard that the Canadian system is difficult to get into, even for like getting into schools. And then they complain about doctor shortages that we have here, but it's because we don't take in any immigrants that are doctors because it's too hard to transition generally.
Well,
For me, what? Mhm.
they take American graduates, obviously,
Right.
but UK people they're slowly starting to take GPs and psychiatrists. That has only
Okay.
recently started, and I think in the near future, because of your doctor shortages, they might start to open up to other specialties as well.
Okay. Well, maybe it would make sense. I figured that the screening is because you don't want to have people with false qualifications in some countries come
No,
in and practice medicine because medicine's if you do something wrong, lives are at stake, right?
yeah.
For my profession, which is health and safety, I have the qualifications. They're just recognized. I don't have to do anything further. I don't have to do exams. I did choose to do certification, so I just that was a personal choice, but it did help with my career. So it's not necessary for everybody. And then we only have a few more minutes, but um, to close, and we don't want to cross the threshold of saying things that are too controversial, right?
No.
But in terms of immigration, um, the UK had the Brexit, and I suppose one of the things that came with Brexit is immigration was changed, so people couldn't just move across to the UK, right?
What?
What do you
Well, I
think
was.
about the
Go
Mhm.
ahead. Yeah. What do I
What do you
think
think about
about?
the immigration situation in the UK, and not just legal but illegal? Does it happen, and what are the
Well,
problems do you think might be because of that?
I don't want to comment on the illegal one just yet. I haven't looked into it too much. I know the numbers are rising, a lot of refugees coming across the channel and causing a lot of problems. But I mean, I'm not a politician. I don't know what to do with these people. They're obviously suffering. But in
Hmm.
terms of legal immigration, Brexit made my coming to the UK possible because what happened when they voted for Brexit and the Europeans were like, well, you don't want us here, we're going back to Europe then, which left a massive gap and shortage in all
Right,
sectors in the UK, which is
right.
then why they had to take all these immigrants and why it's now so easy for a Trinidadian to move to the UK because to have all these job openings that the Europeans left open. So not
Okay.
just in medicine, in all fields, even in your field, health and
Mm-hmm.
safety, you
Mm-hmm.
they have so many job openings, and all the big companies sponsor visas. So as long as you can get a
Okay.
company that's willing to sponsor your visa, you can come to the UK, which could not happen pre-Brexit
Right.
because they were
Supply.
forced by EU legislation to offer the job to someone from the UK or the EU before offering it to anyone else, which you don't have to do anymore.
Right. Okay.
So it's a good thing. It's a
Um,
good thing. It's a good thing for people from developing countries if who want to immigrate to the UK.
mm, okay.
It's
I
beneficial.
Yeah, we get a lot of immigrants in Canada now. I think they increased um how many they want to take in, and it's like hundreds of thousands of immigrants per year. So that's a lot of people coming in, but the problem it creates is that things are expensive. So the demand for housing and I guess like just general expenses go up. So
Mm,
that causes a few issues. I don't know about the illegal part, but it does happen as well. So people crossing the borders and um
mm,
the there aren't enough places to house people and take care of them. But so it creates some issues, but for the legal routes are still good. Canada is still good. I guess UK is a good place too. I suppose if I didn't come to Canada, I was talking about it recently. Maybe I would have gone to the UK.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except I don't know about the climate difference. I have to do with the winters here, but the summers are good.
Yeah,
Even
that's the
even
difference.
fall is good.
The summers here are not amazing, but the weather is mild throughout the year, so you don't get
Okay,
terrible winters. That's a good thing. Winter is not terrible.
right. So I don't know. Well, I'm kind of prepared. I'm kind of looking to see if I could if I tolerate it better this year. Anyway, let's
All right.
end for now. But thank
All
you for
right.
your time. I know
You're
that you have
welcome.
to go and get some barbecue.
Barbecue,
This is
yeah.
Trinidad barbecue, you get it?
Now, no, no, American barbecue.
Oh
tell nothing
no.
like UK barbecue is not good stuff. So I'm gonna get to American barbecue place.
Okay, closest you get then.
Yeah.
All right, yes. Thanks again for your
All
time.
right, thanks for having
And
me.
next time. All right,
All
peace
right.
out. Yeah.